comes to your mind when you think of illegal drugs?
Illegal drugs? They're terrible. They ruin people's lives.
You know, I think they're pretty bad, but if you don't get addicted to them, then I don't think it's necessarily bad, but not good. You know, like, good. If it makes you feel good, then I think you should do it, but not get addicted. Like, for me personally, I'm not addicted, but I can control it myself.
Well, to me, it's mainly the effects that the drugs have on a person's particular brain, and how these effects affect different parts of the brain.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, you see, as for example, marijuana, as the THC is ingested through the lungs and it goes up through the bloodstream into the brain, it attaches to cannabinoid receptors, which allows us to feel the feelings that marijuana produces in our brain.
The first thing that comes to my mind, among many other things, but the main thing is crime.
Tell me more about why drugs are bad.
They hurt you.
When I think of illegal drugs, I think of drugs that are prohibited by our society, and then I think of the drugs that are prescribed.
And why is that?
Because nowadays, many people abuse prescribed drugs.
And can you list some of the drugs that you are aware of?
That's difficult for me because I don't really know the names of them, but I cocaine, marijuana, let's think, oxycontin, no, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of the names.
I don't know very many, but I know there's coke, weed, meth, heroin, ecstasy, glue. Those are the only ones that come to the top of my mind.
Marijuana, obviously, methamphetamines, cocaine, most opiates like heroin and dopamine and stuff like that. There's also prescription drugs like Oxycontin and Xanax, and the list goes on and on.
I'm aware of marijuana, also known as Mary Jane, grass, weed, dope. I'm also aware of cocaine, known as coke or blow, heroin, horse or smack. I'm also aware of amphetamines, and crystal meth is another popular drug these days, and dangerous drug. Those are kind of the ones that come to mind.
Do you?
What's marijuana?
It's a drug.
What does it do?
Can you list some of the drugs that you are aware of that people are currently abusing?
Some of the drugs that I know that are currently being abused are drugs such as oxycodone, oxycontin, and one that's commonly known as Adderall. It consists of dextroamphetamine and amphetamine, and basically what it's used for is it's prescribed to those who have ADHD, but then they're sold out and they're abused for people that need higher awareness or concentration.
Can you think of some problems that are associated with these drugs?
Overdose.
Overdose? Anything else? And can you elaborate?
Yeah, actually, it was a long time ago. This is too emotional for me. I don't know if I can go into it, but my brother, he almost died, you know. They're bad. Drugs are bad. Do you know that? They're bad.
Yes, drugs are bad.
Yeah. So just know that, okay, dear? They're not good for you. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Kids, if you're listening out there, don't do drugs, please. Not good. Not good. Go ahead.
You know, I don't think there's necessarily very many problems. One of the problems is that it can get really expensive.
As the drugs affect your brain, it creates addictions in the brain, and that the brain needs these drugs to survive or to thrive. And this happens very quickly with some drugs, and this can be a major problem, and it can lead to overdoses as people need more and more of these substances.
Some of them are related to the physical effects that they have on people's brains and on their bodies, and also on their ability to function properly, either in their job or in their life or their social life. The effects relate to how their families are affected by when they're taking these drugs, and how their personal relationships are damaged by when they're taking drugs.
I don't think there's that many problems with drugs. I just think that's bad for you. One of the main problems I find personally, is overdose, because people don't understand to what extent they should be taking it, so then they keep on taking it and think that they can just get away with it, but then they end up overdosing and it can lead to death.
You've mentioned your brother. Who else specifically is affected by illegal drugs, and in what ways?
It's just bad for the youth. The youth today, they can't do drugs. Do you know that? That's no drugs for youth. No drugs. I know. I'm aware.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I've seen it firsthand. My brother, he was a teenager. He almost died.
I think everyone's affected because the police try to, they crack down on us for the smallest things. And I just think that no matter who does these, they just all get in trouble.
Well, mainly the users of the drugs, as they are the only ones who are affected by the chemicals that are in their brains. But it can also affect socially around other environments and other people.
Would you say that it affects their family members?
Well, to a point. If the people are affected physically and mentally in certain social aspects and environments, these people can be affected and can affect other people.
Could be lots of serious consequences around the use of drugs on individuals, as well as I said, drug users will have difficulty maintaining a job or fulfilling their responsibilities to society, or having healthy relationships with people, and it goes beyond the individual, but also affects the people around them in their circle of influence. Also, I think that drugs are expensive, and people that are on drugs don't often have a good job, and they're probably not that well off, and will tend to turn to crime, or prostitution, or these types of things, in order to fund their habits, and this is a serious problem.
People like me.
I find that everyone is affected by the abuse of prescribed drugs.
And so that's an obvious consequence. Can you identify any other consequences that are associated with illegal drugs?
I don't think it's good for your self-esteem.
I've never really done it that much. Just with friends, in social gatherings.
First off, some extreme cases, death. Major brain damages can also occur with some of these drugs, but also just social lives can be impacted by these things that have sometimes terrible impacts.
If you're talking about drugs like heroin or crystal meth, where those have serious and irreversible damage to the brain and to the body, whereas it's debatable whether marijuana has similar types of effects in terms of physical damage and also addiction and those types of things. So it depends on which drug you're talking about.
Some problems is people get really mean and aggressive.
Anything else?
No.
Do you think personally that marijuana should be legalized?
No! Never! No, not a chance.
I think it should be, because it helps everybody. It makes you feel really peaceful and at home. And, when you think back and you have that nostalgia of your mom's homemade cookings, and when you smoke weed, it makes you feel that. Makes you feel as if you're eating your mom's homemade spaghetti when you were 6.
Well, see, for figures, 400,000 people have been killed just this year from the effects of tobacco and tobacco smoke, but 0 have been killed from the effects of marijuana. And when you speak of illegal drugs, the main ones that have harmful effects are amphetamines and cocaine and heroin, but marijuana is, it has less major effects on the brain and less lasting effects than some of these other drugs. And it might not necessarily be legalized, but it shouldn't be illegal to the extent that it is.
Many people have made the parallel between alcohol and marijuana, and that in fact alcohol might be a much more dangerous drug than marijuana, and that there's no real good reason for not decriminalizing marijuana.
What does marijuana do?
Can you think of any examples of things that people can do to help themselves that are on these illegal drugs?
Don't do legal drugs.
Yeah, but what if they're
Well,
addicted?
so in addiction, the brain needs these things, and the only way to get off of it is to, I guess, wean yourself off of these drugs. But to get off of the drugs, I guess you need to, I guess rehab is a very good option for people because it's a way to get to detox themselves from these drugs.
The main thing is to get off the drugs, and in many cases that means that they have to go through a hard time of withdrawal and detoxification and rehabilitation.
All right, so I think it's pretty clear, but my final question is, what is your overall opinion on illegal drugs?
Bad! Not good! Don't do drugs! Hear me? Don't do drugs! That's all I can say.
Thank you very much.
Nowadays, millions of people abuse prescribed drugs and use it for the unintended purpose, and thousands of those people overdose on it.
My opinion would differ depending on which illegal drug you're talking about.
I think illegal drugs are... I think they're pretty good.
Well, so some drugs should be held in higher respect than others in a negative aspect because they have worse negative effects.
Drugs are bad!